So yeah, today, you all are magazine journalists and publishers, and in the magazine world. And so at the top, I just want to acknowledge that I am not of that ilk. But what I am of is I come from a background of bootstrap, backpack, guerrilla style, one, two, three person operations. And I've been working for the last decade here at the center in New Jersey, with all kinds of organizations and individuals, from entrepreneurs to small hyperlocals. Some of them are magazines, but the majority of them are local news and information providers and publications. So I come at this from the perspective of, look, we don't have a lot of money, we don't have a lot of time, and we have to wear about 56 different hats, across the spectrum of what it takes to run a news organization, whether that be a magazine or an online digital publication or a podcast or so forth. So I like to approach this from that mindset because there are so many things that you have to do, even at the larger organizations, as we've seen everyone being forced to do more with less, or as people say. And so I'm going to try to give you a sense of how I use some of these tools, and that's what they are. We can talk about that later. They are tools to fill in those gaps. And this is not intended to be, even though some of the bosses and owners of the larger organizations tend to see it this way. This is not meant as a way to replace people. In fact, that is the opposite of what you should be doing with these tools. You should be using them as little sidekicks to help you do your work better and more efficiently, so that you can get out there back into the communities that you're reporting on, that you serve, talking and interacting with the human beings that make this work valuable. And I feel like every time I do one of these, I have to start up top by hedging like this, because so many times, as we're talking about the introduction of these new technologies and these new tools, the first place that so many people go, especially people who haven't really spent a lot of time using them, is getting them to do the writing for you. And I can't remember who said it. Something, I feel like the last name is like McDonough or McCullough or something like that. Who said, writing is thinking, and thinking is hard, and that's what makes it worth doing. And so when people gravitate immediately towards having these tools do the writing for you, I cringe and I recoil at that, because number one, if you don't, can I say bad words in Canada? Is that cool? If you don't give a shit enough of a shit to write it yourself, then why would anyone else give a shit enough to read it, right? And so I want to take that perspective on this, because I think if we're using these tools to do the actual writing for us, then what are we doing here? You know what I mean? So put all that kind of talk aside, and come with me as we focus a little bit on the more infrastructure side, the back end side, the utilitarian aspect of it, so that, again, you can spend less time doing the boring, tedious shit that takes up all your time that you could be spending serving and working with your community. So overview here. There's little emoji reactions, which I love that they're floating. Give me a clap emoji if you've ever used a chatbot before, whether it be ChatGPT or Claude or Bing, all these things. Okay, I'm seeing some claps. How about give me a little thinking guy emoji if you've never really messed with them or you feel really unfamiliar with the tools. Okay, a couple of those. Okay, cool. So we're going to try to thread the needle between those two. I feel like I'm coming in blurry for some reason. Hold on. Okay, a little better. Anyway, so these tools, just to introduce you to these tools are how they work. Let's start with that. How they work. These tools take a large corpus of text and information that they've been, quote unquote, trained on, and they do their best to try to predict or anticipate what the next word in a series of words is. Some people refer to them as glorified autocorrect. I think in some ways that's very accurate, but in other ways it's not. And when we say they're trained, what that really means is that these companies that have made the tools and the open source communities who have built their own as well, the way these things work in a very reductive and simplified way is they have mapped out what are called vectors, which is simply the mathematical term for the distance and direction between 2 points. They have mapped out different vectors which equate to relationships between millions and millions of words and concepts. So they can understand, quote unquote, what the relationship is between one word or concept and its related concepts. And by fine-tuning, as you've heard, those vectors and the distances and directions between those words and concepts, this is where the models, as they call them, start to emerge, and how they are able to imitate and reproduce very common or increasingly uncommon patterns of speech and human language, particularly English, although it's incredible the developments that have been happening in other languages. And so that's an overview. Again, I'm not a science guy. I'm not a math guy. Math terrifies me generally, and I think we're getting a little too close to math talking about vectors, so I'll stay away. But essentially, in a nutshell, that is essentially what these tools are doing. So that is why that is where that sort of uncanny valley. This feels really weird, like human consciousness. This thing is conscious. What it is doing is replicating the patterns of language that it is trained on. And so these are great for a lot of things. It's great for like novelty. Oh, cute, it wrote me a poem about whatever, or it read a song, or it was able to come up with good names or cute names and puns for my coffee shop or whatever my idea. But one of the biggest value in this is so much of the written world, the document world that we live in as both companies and organizations, but also as journalists who deal with governments and institutions. So much of that is so form fitting. There are so many templates and document structures that exist out there that those relationships, those vectors between those kind of concepts are so heavily overrepresented in the model that what these tools are actually really good at is filling in form style entries. So for instance, a press release is one of the most common forms of communication between institutions and organizations. It's in these models so often that the overall general structure of a press release, I mean, it's such a basic concept. It's one of the first things you teach you in strategic communications and multimedia and journalism school, to understand what the structure of a press release looks like. The same thing goes for many common, not strictly legal forms, and other official documents, memorandums, those kind of things. They have a set structure to them, which makes them perfect candidates for these kinds of tools. This also extends to the kind of find and replace tasks that we're going to get into in a bit. One of the most common things that I use these tools for are you get a list of email addresses and names from people. Maybe it's user form submissions or something, and you need to now standardize. Some people write their name in all caps. Some people put weird capitalization. Some people put the emails in caret brackets, the little pointy brackets. Some people put them in parentheses. One of my most common uses is just I drop a list of names and emails and say, clean up this list. And it knows that what I mean by that is to take and standardize them into a standard format. Even just little things like that is incredibly useful on its face. And in fact, if you have followed the developments of these large language models going back to GPT-2 in the earlier days, like 3 or 4 years ago, the big get for these tools was text classification. One of the main reasons they built these massive databases of relationships between words and concepts is so they can use them to categorize and classify and label batches of text. And to any data journalist out there, anybody who's worked with spreadsheets or CSVs, who has to go through and encode data, this can be incredibly useful. And if that were the only thing that they were able to do as a result of their release, that would still be a huge benefit. And so I try to focus on those use cases when we talk about them, because I think ultimately once the sparkle and the subsides and the dust settles on a lot of this, that is ultimately where their lasting impact and value will be. And the dust will settle, trust me. This happens every so often, every 6 years. There's a pivot to this or a pivot to that. And ultimately, what really the damage comes is because the folks who run these organizations who don't have the intimate relationships, not only with their employees, let alone the communities that they serve and the work that is done, they see this as a really quick, easy shortcut where they can get rid of some cost of labor, lay some people off, and they think that this is going to be the next big thing. We saw it with the pivot to video, where all of a sudden the platforms decide video, they're going to prioritize video, and now everybody has to be a video producer. And then 3-4 years later, when it turns out that was actually smoke and mirrors, they lay off everybody, the video team, or make them reapply for their jobs. Okay, so when the dust does settle, the real interesting stuff and the real lasting value in this kind of technological advancements tends to come once these tools have faded into the background processes of the technology and the workflows that we already know and use on a regular basis. So I'm trying to position myself, and I'm trying to help people position themselves professionally and individually in a position where they can be ready for that, and they're at least familiar with the way that these tools work at a base level, so that when that becomes a standard ask for a journalist, hey, take this and clean this list, or take this and repurpose this press release for this, or blah blah blah. They're not stuck in the past. The example I like to use is I worked for a law firm in Harlem right at the end of college and undergraduate, and the lawyer, God bless him, he's one of my mentors. He's one of the smartest international human rights attorneys I've ever met. He was Nelson Mandela's attorney in the United States back in the day. And but God bless him, he didn't know about Control F or Command F. And so he would have me working on these UN dispute tribunal resolutions and documentation, and he would ask me to go through them, 300 pages or whatever it is, go through them and find all the instances of this case being mentioned or this person being mentioned. And I would come back to him in like 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes and say, here's all the lists, here's the citations, whatever. And he was blown away because he had assumed that I was going to be printing out, first of all, printing all 300 pages of the document and then going through like with a highlighter and finding each thing. And I made the fatal mistake, as every lower level employee does when they want a pat on the head for how quickly they did it, of telling them, oh, no, I just used the search and replace feature, which of course led to me being expected to now turn these around in 15, 20 minutes every time, instead of giving me a nice 3 hours or at least 2 hours and 45 minutes of messing around on Twitter. But that is essentially what these tools, the jump and the advancement of where these tools, I believe, will go in the future. It will become silly. It will be equivalent to you not knowing how to use Command F or Control F and find and replace when it comes to the types of tasks and tools, types of tasks and procedures that these tools are ultimately best used for. Let's talk about some of the ways that we use these tools. I do want to show you something, and I want to see if I want to start with something that is not AI, but it is the connective tissue that will allow you to use these tools. And in fact, if you don't know about what I'm about to tell you, which is if this then that style automation, I'm talking no code. You don't have to know code, just the ability to set up a trigger and response style automation for when something happens in this app or in this spreadsheet. I want this to happen in another app, right? There, I use a tool called Zapier. If you've heard of Zapier and you don't use it yet, you're losing it. You're behind. Zapier is, there's another one called make.com that allows you to do this. Again, these are no code. You don't have to learn anything. You just have to click and point and click. That allows you to connect different apps using APIs. If you don't know what APIs are, they're application something like programming interface. It's just something, it's a language that allows apps to talk to each other. There are certain inputs and outputs that each app has, and the connective tissue that allows them to talk to each other comes in the form of what's called an API. And Zapier handles this process for you and other tools like it. Ironically, chat and these other, large language model tools could probably write you some code that will allow you to build an API interface. But because I don't want to do that, I use Zapier to do this. And so I'll show you an example of what that looks like. Okay, so this is what Zapier is. And Zapier allows you to, like I said, automate processes. So for one, I'll show you my favorite one that I use every day. Now, don't be intimidated by the multiple steps in this. This is essentially just a series of if this, then this, then this, then this. What this does is when it sees a new record in Airtable, which if you're familiar with Airtable, it's great. You can also do this with Microsoft Excel, or you can do this with Google Sheets. I prefer to use Airtable. This tool, Zapier, is watching an Airtable base, right, which is just a spreadsheet essentially, or multiple spreadsheets. It's waiting for a new record. Good Lord, there's a lot of these. It's waiting for a new record to appear down here. And whenever there is a new record in this particular spreadsheet, it sends the information in this spreadsheet, in this row, to ChatGPT. And it is accompanied by instructions, a user message. And all I wanted to do is summarize the following text. The summary will be used to promote an event, article, or information contained in the text. And I decided I wanted to make sure the tone is right. So the tone and the voice of the summary should be XYZ. And if you look here, you can see here is where the text will come in. You'll see what happens later. And then I have a tone, and I can choose from a variety of tones that I've preset here: serious, disappointed, quirky, aggressive, casual, professional, educational, and so forth. So once it sees a new record, Zapier pulls in the information into the placeholders here, including the text I want to promote and the vibe or the tone of the text, and sends it to ChatGPT with that instructions. There's a little bit of additional background instructions here, just giving the bot what role I want it to play. In this case, it's a helpful bot system that summarizes text to make it easier to explain. And then I have it use that summary to create a variety of things, suggest possible headlines. Side note, I have been in an internal battle with these infernal tools trying to get them to not use title case. I hate title case. I can't stop them. I don't know why. It's Sam Altman and I are enemies because of this. I also I want to see what it looks like a possible LinkedIn post about this. Maybe some tweets, or the tone of the tweets, again, should be this, 5 possible social media posts. I also want it to create a label for the text. And again, don't include the word label, 5 words or less. And then finally, my favorite is make the case for why people should care about the issues and topics discussed in this text. And then what happens is once that's done, it goes in and it updates the Airtable record with the labeled text, as you can see. The big bulk of text comes in here, and then it's replaced with a label, so it's not just a massive block. And then it sends me a message in Slack. And what that looks like, I will show you now. This is what it looks like. So if I submitted the text for one of our events, it comes back in a thread and it gives me a summary. It gives me possible headlines. It gives me possible sample social posts, and it makes the case for why people might care about this issue. In this case, we're talking about the housing crisis. And the reason why I love this is because the majority of the work that I do with these tools is not having them generate new text. It's having them work with existing text that I'm familiar with. And this is incredibly important because this reduces the likelihood of what a lot of people call hallucinations. When you are asking these tools to generate text from scratch, they're just going to start spewing text, whether it's nonsense or not. But I found, and the studies have found, that when you use these tools and have them work on existing material, the rate of hallucination or false or mistakes goes down dramatically. And so it also helps if you are very familiar with the text that you're working with. I'm not asking it to summarize other people's text. I'm asking it to summarize event descriptions, Medium posts, articles that I've written, so that I can instantly know when it's bullshitting me, essentially. One second, let me take a sip here. Okay. And what this does, even though I've literally never used any of the tweet suggestions, and I'm probably just going to delete that step because we don't really tweet that much anyway anymore after the platform went garbage. I still browse it because there's still incredibly deranged people on that website, and you'll have to pry it from my cold dead fingers. But for something like making the case for why people should care about this, it's so crucial because we didn't realize how valuable that was until we started using it. Because oftentimes, and I'm sure some of you can relate, maybe some of you won't, but when I'm in a story or when I'm working on an issue or a campaign or a project, I know why it's important to me. It's self-evident. It's obvious why this is important because, hey, this is good work. We're doing this is helping. I can see directly the people that it's impacting. But sometimes you can get lost in the forest, or you miss the forest for the trees, and it can be helpful to have it take a step back and say, hey, maybe this group might care about it for a different reason, or hey, even more so, can you red team this idea? Can you tell me what I'm missing? Tell me some areas or gaps that I haven't included or considered. And this is where these tools can be really helpful as an assistive, not necessarily oversight, but as an assistive sort of check on what you're doing. And just that little nudge can often really help to recontextualize or reframe or sort of repurpose the approach that you have to any story or campaign or initiative. And with that tool Zapier, you can now automate this. So I can also, it doesn't have to just come from Airtable. I also have some of these set up where I've just, anytime a message in Slack in a specific channel is received, or even with a specific keyword like hey chat or hey Google, if you want to use the Gemini one or whatever, it's looking for that keyword, it sees that keyword in that specific channel, and then it performs a series of actions based on the inputs that it receives and the instructions that go along with it. All of that is set up without any coding or experience, or that it's all just point and click. It is outside of the Chat GPT interface or the Claude interface, which is a different beast than the API version. The chat interface is calibrated specifically for that public-facing, haha, hee hee, we're chatting, we're having a good time, look at this product demo, and everybody's having fun and using it. But once you move outside of that and you bring these tools as an additional layer on top of your already existing workflows, the possibilities explode. and it becomes much more valuable and useful possible tool. And so this can be great for, like I said, a variety of things, whether it's just, reformatting a list. The transcription services and tools that OpenAI offers are bar none probably the best ones that I've ever seen in terms of accuracy, capitalization, punctuation. Otter is up there. It's pretty good, especially because I think Otter also can like learn the voice, patterns of particular speakers and auto tag them. And of course, Otter.ai also has now it has a chat component where you can ask questions of the transcripts that from your events. In fact, I'll show you. I'll do it one more time. I'll show you here. We do have a question from Tara. While in the end, this definitely could save a lot of time in the long run on menial tasks, my concern is how long it will take to originally set up things like this. How long did it take to set that up? The example you showed, the one with Airtable. If I set it up now, if I had to replicate it, it would take me about 15 minutes. The biggest time suck for something like that is in the testing and iteration in the original phase. You could essentially spend, it overall accumulated across the entire time I've been playing around and tweaking with it. Couple hours, over give or take, and that's also depending on how much time did I really need to spend on it, and how much time did I spend messing around with it, trying to break it, see what it was capable of, and to really understand the contours of the possibilities and capabilities. If the actual time I should have spent on it, probably a couple hours, really. And once it's set up, it's done. I don't really have to mess with it at all, unless I feel like I want to add a new thing. Like I added the LinkedIn thing recently. Um, but really, ultimately, a couple hours, not too bad, honestly. And the amount of time it saves me on the back end or in the long run, I hit a break-even point pretty quickly. So that is not a huge concern. And also, that's the case with any new process and workflow. How much time did it take? Does it take you to learn a new app or skill? And how much time is that worth down the road once that starts to accumulate? That's up to you. Ultimately, I don't even really have to set up the automation to do this. I don't have to have Zapier do it. I could just pop over to the chat GPT window that I always have pinned as a browser tab, or Claude. I use Claude a lot more now when I'm doing the chat interface because I think it's better. But I could just do that. And sometimes I do. Sometimes I just I don't want to set up all automation for this. I only have to do this maybe once a week. I'll just jump in and say, hey, I need you to summarize this. Hey, use a more active voice. Or, hey, can you break this down into bullet points? One of my favorite uses, thank you, Suzanne. One of my favorite uses for a really quick automation that took me 2 seconds to set up, and I'll show you that now, is sometimes I get emails from people that are just too long, and my role or my task is just buried in like the 5th paragraph of somebody who's just doesn't have a lot of work to do apparently, and just feels like they want to type out 1,000,000 words for an email. So I just have Zapier looking at my email, and anytime an email is labeled with the label AI, it automatically reads the email, pulls out action items or to-do items that are assigned to me. Anytime my name is mentioned, I just have it say, hey, read this email, give me a summary, a quick 1-paragraph summary of what it's about, and then a bulleted list of things that I have to care about or do as a result of the email. And again, here we go. I'll show you what that looks like. Here it is. So anytime I tag an email, I'll just tag one now. Let's open up my Gmail and we'll tag an email. Let's see. This one is long. There's nothing in here. Let's see right here. Here's something about AP from the AP. I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to label this as AI. I'm going to hit apply, and it may take a second to go, but this is what these look like. This one has no specific tasks to Joe Amditis in this email thread. However, since Joe designed the report mentioned by Denise, he should ensure that any necessary follow-ups or confirmations related to the printing report are completed. No indicated directly, none indicated directly. Here's something about my students. Oh, look, one from Joyce Byrne acknowledges that he won't be using slides, but may want to screen share. Ensure he has no slides. If Joe has colleagues or students interested, provide their details. Present at the event starting at 10:05 PT, concluding with a Q&A, right? This is incredibly useful for long-winded. And Joyce, don't get me wrong, no offense. I'm not saying your emails were long-winded. I just wanted notification reminders for those emails. Here's that one that I just tagged. It's already here. New email from Amy Reinhardt. Register for the webinar, apply as a presenter, look out for the upcoming news, and email this to join the Slack. I think I messed up the bolding markdown for Slack, but you can see how easily you can build on this and make this more and more useful. This is the kind of thing that has saved me so much time, so much stress, And really, yes, I did, Tara. I set up that via Zapier. It's just one of those things that's peace of mind. And also on the back end, it's also documentation. So now I can go through and I can be like, okay, here's the emails I've flagged, all this kind of stuff. It's super useful. And you can customize it to your needs. All you need is an API key from OpenAI or Claude or Gemini or whatever. I've tried a bunch of different ones. Claude is my favorite for long text. If I have like a meeting transcript and I want it to go through it and pull out interesting or relevant quotes and then just explain why it chose those quotes, Claude overwhelmingly takes the cake. It's the accuracy, the ability to understand what I want is way better. Chat used to be good. I don't know what happened in the last like 4 to 5 months, but it has taken a dive in my anecdotal personal experience. Claude is CLAUDE.ai. I'll put that in the chat there. Um, yeah, this one is by Anthropic. And another thing I like about Anthropic as a company versus Chat, GPT, or OpenAI is Claude is built on what's called a constitutional AI. So whereas ChatGPT is a more Wild West sort of open, they have their rules and their guidelines and their content stuff. Claude actually has multiple layers of even AIs checking on what you've submitted to it and what it's going to respond to you. It actually it is a more is a more ethical approach to the use of these tools, in my opinion. As even though I don't want to get into all the unethical ways that these for-profit companies have stolen data and everything, and I try to avoid any using the tools, especially the image generation tools like Midjourney, outside of educational and instructional purposes. But the way that it's set up and the way the company is set up and the way the company was founded, in fact, as a direct offshoot because of a disagreement in the way that the approach to these tools. I just feel more comfortable with that one. And now with the latest release of number 3, oh, is Claude not available in Canada? Damn, trying to get out the VPN. Oof, that sucks. Chat is still available, I believe, in Canada. It'll be fine. And again, a lot of those API tasks through Zapier that I use are still the Chat GPT API, mostly because the center pays, the $5 a month or whatever for the API usage. As a side note, the Chat GPT Plus $20 a month subscription is totally separate from the API usage. Up until I think just this week, you would only be charged for what you use with the API. And coming as an example, I do a lot of these trainings and I do a lot of that, building those guides and everything that you will link in the chat on how to use these tools that I wrote. Even with all that and my obsession with them, we were averaging about $5 a month in API usage costs. It is ridiculously affordable. And on top of that, I tend to try to use the most current, more advanced models for most of the stuff that I'm doing, like summarize this email and give me bullet points. You don't need to use the GPT-4 or GPT-4 Turbo. You can use the 3.5, the earlier models, because the complexity of the task that you're doing does not rise to the level that you need some complex reasoning or logic machine. I do want to pause and just check the questions one more time. Let's see. Would you recommend that each employee sets up their own AI workflows, or is there a way to set up these automations company-wide? Both. I think yes. I think it is important for you to get familiar with these tools on an individual level, and I also think at some level that the warehouse worker, the restaurant server in me is like my boss. I don't want my boss to know. I want to build my own stuff. Like we can use the company stuff, but like I want to reserve some individual privacy and autonomy over what I do with these tools. And in fact, there are studies that have hinted or at least suggested that there are people who use AI and use these tools publicly, and then there's like the secret cyborgs who will never tell you that they're using these tools, don't want you to know. They're probably smarter, considering the example I shared about informing my boss that I was able to use Control F instead of printing out the files. But in that sense, there are a lot of people who are using them individually. But what you can do is with the various platforms, OpenAI included, you can set up a company-wide API key, and then you can issue up to 5, depending on your subscription or whatever, 5 other API keys that are in that organization, under that organization's umbrella or organization ID. It's great from an organizational perspective because it allows you to sort of track usage, see who's using the most. So you maybe need to adjust or add more information or add more accounts. And they do have an enterprise version of ChatGPT, which I think it's $25 a month for the actual interface one, the actual chat.openai.com. Um, and it'll allow you to share prompts. We haven't even talked about like the custom GPTs, which is essentially the chat interface version of the API stuff. So you can give each custom GPT its own instructions. I have one, for instance, that I built. It's the most simple thing in the world, but it's incredible because it's an API. I mean, sorry, it's an alt text hero. So if I take an image, let's take an image. This might be too large of a pic of an image. Let's say, okay, here's an image I took at the Trenton State House, and I'm not going to say anything. This thing has a bunch of information and instructions in it already. I'm just going to hit send this image to it, and it has been informed that I want it to write alt text for this image. And now it's giving me two possible options for an alt text that I can use to share and make my images more accessible on social media and elsewhere and on my website. Um, there is important to note here that I've spoken with several accessibility advocates, people who are visually impaired or blind, and it's not perfect. This is, again, these are starting point because it isn't able to truly understand human context. If I were, for instance, to add some context instead of, let's just say I like this one, instead of just giving it the image, if I were to say, here's a photo I took at the Trenton State House during a hearing on a bill that would gut the state's transparency laws. And then I give it the image. Now it's going to give me a little bit more context, and it's going to create a better alt text. And that is really the key with these tools. They work so for all intents and purposes. Without much input. But the more input you give it, the more context you give it, the more, again, the more material you give it to work with, as opposed to having to come up with it on its own, the more accurate and the more relevant and useful the outputs will be. So let's compare real quick. This one, the first one was an individual seated at a microphone in a wood paneled room facing a panel of 5 people sitting along, blah, blah, blah. Very general, very broad. This one, now that I've given it just one sentence of context, a speaker addresses a panel during a hearing at the Trenton State House concerning a bill on state transparency laws. The panel listens, and now blah blah blah. It's giving basically the same thing. So it's padded it a little bit. With a little extra like 30 seconds or 20 seconds of input and additional context, I've gone from a generic, relative better than nothing alt text to a more specific and contextual example. Okay, one example here that I love is I just bought a condo for my first time as a 35-year-old man. I finally own a home, deeply even in more debt now. Yay me, right? Some things these things are not good at, right? Uh, Legal stuff. You do need to hire a real estate attorney when you buy a home, even if you're buying it, and especially I would say if you're buying it from your best friends across the street. These tools are not fact tools. And I want to stress that. And Jeff Jarvis says this a lot. These are not fact bots, and they should not be used where facts are incredibly important. They are text manipulation, text restructuring, text formatting, and text prediction tools. We've all probably heard the hilarious and predictable example of that one attorney who decided to like write his whole case brief, or have the bot write his whole case brief. And of course, it just made up citations. It and then he did it again. Apparently he did it again when the judge was like, these are all bullshit. What is this? He tried to do it again and use the bot again. What they are good at is taking information and distilling it. And so one of the things I was able to use them for is basic stuff like, hey, my landlord wants, my previous landlord, who in 8 days I will be, or 9 days I will be free of, and will have hopefully never have a landlord again. I have to submit a formal letter of intent to vacate residency or terminate residency. I wanted to make sure that I'm doing that in the most serious person sounding way possible. So I give it the information. I give the bot the information about me, where I'm living, I give an email from the landlord, and I just say, hey, can you write a letter of this? It gives me a draft. I look at it. It sounds good. I review it. I cannot stress how much robust and ongoing human oversight is for these things. That was fine. Now, me trying to parse a 300-page homeowners association, condo association rules document, useless. Me trying to understand the disclosure documents using all three of the bots. I finally gave in and hired an attorney. It was the best thing I ever did. I can't believe I was such an idiot for thinking I didn't have to do that. That is not a good use case, right? So again, just distilling that information, breaking it down into bite-sized chunks, and to helping you work your way through it is great. Outlines are another great thing. In the class that I teach, strategic communication or multimedia production for strategic communications at Montclair State, I very openly tell my students that I expect you and encourage you to use these tools as a planning tool. Use the bots as a planning assistant, help you outline, get past the blank page paralysis, but you have to be willing and ready to stand and defend the work that you submit. In the same way that a news organization or a publication it doesn't matter if you got the text from a freelancer, a veteran staffer, or a bot. You are ultimately responsible for the output and what you publish. And if you can't stand behind it, defend what you publish, then why are you even involved in the process at all? Why are you the arbiter of that information if you're not willing to take the time to review it and make sure that it is accurate and edited? And I know I'm preaching to the crowd here or choir here, because there's nowhere on the planet that is more rigorous about fact checking and human oversight and editing than magazines. And most common people, lay people, don't know that, or maybe don't know that. But as I understand it, it is harder to publish an article, a 1,500-word article in a magazine than it is to publish a 1,000-page book from a publisher, nonfiction or otherwise. Um, oh, we got more questions. Does ever a connection with design software as a way to automate text formatting? So there is. You could probably hack something together like that, where in the sense that you give it, you upload a Word document to Google Docs, and then it's watching Google Docs, it reformats the Google Doc, and then automatically you download it as a Word doc afterwards. That to me, would be a little tough. Zapier only works with online tools, yes, but they do have, Microsoft has its own suite. They call it Microsoft Copilot. It's being integrated into Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and all of that. And we haven't even talked about some of the ways that these tools can be useful when it comes to designing an outline for a PowerPoint, or for running mass prompt commands in a column in a spreadsheet. I mentioned earlier about how useful these tools were originally designed to be for text classification. When you install like a little when you install like an extension, I think it's called GPT for Work, you can do mass commands in Google Sheets. So for instance, if I have a spreadsheet here and I have, actually, let's just go here and say, give me a CSV. I'm going to generate, garbage data with 2 columns. Let's see, name and email. It just, I need a CSV of fake names and emails. Claude might not do that, because again, I said oh, perfect. Okay, so this is just going to do, these are fake names. I'm just going to say 30 more or 20 more, and it's done. And we're gonna try this. Yada 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 yada. We know. Okay, so let's try this. Let's try putting this into tabular format. Can you put that into tabular format? Okay, yes, we get it, we get it. One thing they need to add to Claude is a stop responding button, like they have in chat. Okay, cool. So here it's giving me columns now. This is good. So I'll take the columns, I'll put it into sheets, and I'll show you what I'm doing here. Okay, maybe 30 was a little too much. All right, let's do this. Now let's bring it over here. All right. So now what I can do is I can do equals GPT. Oh, hold on. Let me enable the extension. There it is, GPT for Sheets. And this is using my API key. Oh, they're moving to of course they're moving to a paid model. All right, well, let's do the free trial. Good Lord. Okay. Uh, let's do equals GPT. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give my prompt is going to be, I don't know, write one sentence saying hi to, right? And then I'm going to go, oh, oops, oh, sorry, to this person, to Liam. We'll just do to Liam. I'm not going to mess with the temperature of the model. I'm just going to hit OK. Hi, Liam. And now what I could do is I could just drag this baby, and it's going to run that same prompt on every cell in this field. It may take a second, but hi, Emma. Hi, you see what I mean? So if I did something different and I said, let's see, provide a confidence score, or let's say, determine the I don't know, let's just try the gender of the name I give you, and provide a confidence score. Provide a confidence score. Let's just see what that does. There's another thing these things can do is they can provide a confidence score of how likely they think that their response is accurate. You see the formatting is a little different, and I can add additional instructions to this as I go in terms of what I want it to return. For some reason, it's giving me 99% confidence on some of them. And I can say, print your response as a percentage, as a gender and a percentage only, like this. And I could say male 99%. Boom. This is going to run up my API costs a little bit, but it's worth it. You sacrifice the body for the game. There we go. Let's try that again. And boom, now we can see it's doing exactly what I said. It better do exactly what I said. It is. Good. So now we've standardized that, and I can go through. It's not sure about Harper. Harper's a little bit less sure. Let's see some of these other ones. Okay, see, unisex, Avery. We've got a slightly less confident Mason, right? We've got 98% on Owen. This is the kind of thing that will again save you a bunch of time if you do it correctly. This is the kind of thing that can really be a game changer in this kind of environment. Without again, with just giving you a starting point on where to dig deeper. I like to describe. I'll end with this. I like to describe these tools as similar to a metal detector. You're on the beach, the Asbury Park, you're at the Jersey Shore, the most beautiful, wonderful beaches in the world. Fight me. You're on the beach, you got your metal detector, you're going along the sand, you hear a beep. You now know that there may or may not be something worth exploring or investigating underneath the sand. You still have to dig it up. You still have to understand what it is. The metal detector can't tell you, I mean, maybe some of them, I'm not in the metal detector community, so maybe some of them can do some kind of spectrograph analysis or whatever and be like, that's definitely, iron. But um, it can tell you something is or it may be there. It can't tell you how it got there, why it's valuable, who cares about it, who it belongs to, any historical significance, whether it's toxic to the environment, whatever. You have to still do all that, but it can save you time. Instead of digging holes every 3 feet and hoping to find something, you can use a metal detector to get you started in the right direction, and then you take it from there.
So first of all, thank you. Second of all, I want to mention the how I found you, which is you've written a guide to Chat GPT prompts. You've literally
Yeah,
written a book. So I
ebook,
encourage
I guess.
everybody to Google Joe's
It's
name.
free, by the way. It's free, by the way. The reason I wrote it is because I got. I saw like a million of these prompt handbook, prompt, whatever, prompt library bullshit. Here, give me $5. And I eventually, like after a month or two, I like bit and I paid $2 for one, and instantly opened it up and realized that it was written by the bot. So I was like, all right, you know what? I've been wanting to learn Notion for a while, and I'm gonna write what I, actually have learned, and so that's where this came from. But yeah, it's free. It's at bit. I'll put the link in the chat, but it's at bit.ly/local news GPT.
Thank you.
It's
And then
geared
also,
toward local news, but it is applicable generally, I think.
yeah, and I'm going to pop a link as well to the conference that you're organizing in May in Detroit. So there's some really good questions. I think I want to go back to kind of basics right now. So I want to assume most everybody now has been exposed and everybody now wants to get started.
Sure.
So where would you start? Like, would you start by kind of taking an inventory of the apps that you're using, like Slack, like MailChimp, like
Hmm.
Buffer and Later, and map those, and then figure out how Zapier can overlay with those? Is that
Yeah, yeah. I would take stock of, what are the things that annoy you most, or what are the things that you spend the most time doing that you are just like, okay, I'm copying, paste, copying, paste, copying, paste, tab, 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 that kind of stuff. On the one hand. On the other hand, anytime, any area where you think like it would be really neat or useful to have an extra set of eyes, or just a sounding board, you might overlay something like that into it. Like I was showing you the example of like make the case for why people should care about this. I really love having, getting harsh criticism from someone like a bot, like which doesn't hit my ego as much because it's not someone I care about telling me, hey, you missed this, or hey, your sentence structure is ass at the beginning here. You might want to change that. Those kind of things. Like where you want feedback that you don't want public, or you don't want people to like internalize, like, oh, you're a bad writer. You can, hey, that is a good example for something or opportunity for a little bit of bot oversight there, or bot notes. So yeah, processes that take a while that are repetitive. Anytime there's that you wish there was just a template. My favorite one with Zapier is like I have a list of names and I have to send out award notifications, or I have to send out grant information, and it's the same, essentially the same email or document, but I have to tweak little changes. Like I have to change the name and the organization and like the context of their grant application or something. And I can just give it a spreadsheet and say, hey, write letters to these people and fill in the blanks, the relevant information to that, to each organization or person. Boom, go. Now I can do that. And all I have to do is go through and say, okay, this is cool, this is cool, this is cool. Instead of having to, tediously copy and paste their name, their organization, their email, all that kind of stuff.
I recently used an AI service to update my resume, and
Oh yeah.
I gotta admit, 50% of it was better. 50% of it I laughed
That's a
and I threw
chunk.
it
That's
out,
a good.
but
Yeah, yeah. I mean, more than 50% of my own writing, I laugh and throw it
yeah,
out. So yeah, it's and what's the rule? The rule. It's like anytime you write something, just delete the first three paragraphs, and there's your lead.
yeah.
That it's a back and forth process for sure. But even a 20% boost or a little bit of a little jump like that can be really useful, especially over time.
Can we
Yeah, yeah. Don't apologize. Don't
sorry.
apologize for cats.
All right. There was a question about tools to avoid if you have kind of a no-go list.
Yeah. I don't know if there's tools. I avoid the ones that you don't like. Like avoid the ones. I mean, obviously, yes. Like Midjourney is entirely built on stolen, uncredited, unpaid, unattributed art. I avoid Midjourney. If you're looking for image generation stuff, and again, we can talk about this for hours, but for me, image generation is just customized, glorified stock images, and they're great for like making sick desktop wallpapers and phone wallpapers, which I will admit that's my favorite thing to do with them. But we have this like weird situation on the internet now where every piece of text has to have an image associated with it. So you're sort of forced to create an image for everything now, online. So in that sense, like, you can use Unsplash, you can use Canva, you can use the stock images and everything like that. Or you can have Bing create you an image, or you can use Photoshop's Firefly is actually my favorite because it's trained entirely on licensed Adobe stock content, and it lets you, do that generative fill where you can customize it. But you're not using it in a situation where you're trying to win an award for something for visual design or visual accompaniment. You're just, I need an image because the stupid, social platform feeds deprioritize anything, any link or whatever that doesn't have a social preview, social card share preview. So in that sense, like, yes, this article, I could use the same, stock photo of the white columned government building, or I can have it generate like an animated or a graphic novel style, something to spice it up. But we're not talking about like these kind of, this is not art. This is just visual placeholder imagery. And so in those cases, that's fine. But I try to stay away from Midjourney in particular, just because of all the bad rap it's gotten. And, as somebody who went to art school for a little bit and dropped out, and who appreciates, and we pay artists to do this kind of stuff, it feels wrong to then use an image generator that is so explicitly trained on unpaid work and uncredited work.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen the list of artists whose work
Oh
was
my God,
into
it's
that, and it's
ridiculous.
shocking.
And they
Um,
haven't changed it. You can still just straight up ask like for an artist's style, and it won't. There's no guardrails. It still will just do it. I protected IP and all that. I have my own quarrels with IP and property and copyright law that we can, hash out at a more institutional scale. But as the current state of things, it's like, no, I'd rather just use a stock image or use one of the better generators if I really have to.
I did see somewhere recently as well that there's a piece of HTML code that you can put on your website if you do not
And
want it to be
yeah,
crawled. So I don't know
the
if anybody cares
robots.txt.
about that, but yeah,
Yeah, I get that, and I think that's really important, especially for smaller publications. I know of one in New Jersey and Princeton where apparently somebody has just been manually copying and pasting all of their articles and putting it into their own like custom GPT and then selling access to the GPT, which is insane. Um, but my only concern about the widespread adoption of the no scraping and no bots thing is the same thing we saw with misinformation and poor pink slime journalism is eventually, and the paywalls is eventually all the accurate trusted information is behind a paywall and all the slop is free for everybody to access. And so
yeah,
at a certain point it sort of tips and becomes okay, so now not only is the internet full of slop and AI generated garbage, but now it's all based on internet garbage, AI generated garbage as well. And it's even harder for them to get for people who don't know it better or don't know that these tools are flawed. And I will never forgive Google, by the way, Google and Bing for tying these tools so closely to search, because I think that is poisoning the well so much that
yeah.
people now assume that these are fact-based search engine tools, and they're absolutely not. They're the opposite of that. But eventually, I worry that all the good stuff is hidden and protected because they're scared of it being ripped off, um, versus all the garbage is free and openly available. And so I see you battling with the cat in the
Yeah.
reflection behind you.
Sorry,
I
I left the door.
I finally have a bigger place now, so I can get a cat. So that's on my
Oh,
list.
good,
I hope to
good,
be. I
good,
hope to
good,
be
good.
eventually like that.
The world needs more cat dads. Um, I I really liked the example that you gave with the alt text, and the reason
Yeah.
that I personally like that is because I struggle with it. I struggle with finding the time to do it, and I tend when I'm doing that kind of thing, I'm doing a whole bunch, and so I just want to plow through, and so I do a really lazy job at alt
Mhm.
text. So thank you for showing that. I think that those of us who can figure out a way to integrate that, that is going to be an amazing time saver. And like you said, like you don't have to
Let
like
him hang out. Let that kitty hang out. We love him.
you don't have to default to it, right? You can rewrite it, you can edit it.
Yeah, same thing with the images too. There's a tendency for people to think with the image generator that you are literally just like, oh, the bot gave it to me, now I have to run this. Like, no, when do you do that with anything? So use it as a starting point. Use it as a piece of a block of wood that you whittle down into the shape and presentation that you like, and give it a finish. You don't just take a chunk of wood off the lathe. You got to put a finish on it. You got to dress it up. You have to do work on it. And Ethan Mollick makes this great point. He's a professor and I think a researcher at Wharton. And it really has stuck with me going back to the whole like if you don't care enough to write it, why should anybody care enough to read it? And it brings up an interesting question about using these tools for something like letters of recommendation for students. I write letters of recommendation for my students, and inherent in that is me signaling to the organization that I'm sending this to that this student is worthy enough that I've spent time out of my day to sit down and write this letter. Like my question is like, what happens when that no longer requires you to burn minutes of your day? And again, if you don't if it doesn't cost you any time to make it, why should it have any value to the person who receives it? And so that I think ultimately is a big question that we're going to have to grapple with and reorient ourselves around what is valuable.